Hello and welcome to Azure Active Directory Authentication. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at ways that Azure Active Directory Authentication helps improve the end user experience. You'll be introduced to self-service password reset, multi-factor authentication, password protection, and passwordless authentication. The main function of Azure Active Directory is the verification or authentication of credentials anytime an end user signs into a device or service or application. Authentication in Azure AD involves more than just a username or password. Components such as self-service password reset, Azure multi-factor authentication, and passwordless authentication are designed to make life easier, not only for the help desk, but also for end users. For example, Azure Active Directory's self-service password reset feature allows users to change their passwords via a web browser from essentially any device. Not only does it allow users to change their passwords, but it also allows them to reset forgotten passwords and to even unlock their accounts. Multi-factor authentication requires users to provide a second form of authentication during sign-in. This second form of authentication is usually a phone call or an SMS text message, or maybe a mobile app notification. Passwordless authentication, as you may have guessed, makes it possible for end users to authenticate without the need to create nor remember a password at all. The Windows Hello service is an example of how users can log in without a password. By providing passwordless authentication to end users, you would of course reduce calls to the help desk for password-related activities. Now, as I mentioned earlier, self-service password reset allows users to change their passwords, to reset their passwords, and to unlock their accounts. So how does this work? Well, when a user needs to perform one of these tasks, the user browses to the password reset portal. The URL for the password reset portal can be seen on your screen. Once the user is at the password reset portal, he is asked to provide his user ID and to complete a CAPTCHA. Azure AD then confirms that the user is allowed to use self-service password reset. If Azure AD confirms that the user is indeed allowed to reset his password, the user is then guided through the password reset process. You'll actually get to walk through a hands-on lab later on that will walk you through the process of setting up self-service password reset. Now let's talk a little bit about Azure multi-factor authentication. Now, a little while ago, I explained how multi-factor authentication requires users to provide a second form of authentication during sign-in. To ensure a user is who they say they are, multi-factor authentication requires that user to provide a combination of something that the user knows, something the user has, and something the user is. The user will need to provide at least two of these authentication factors. The something you know piece is usually a password. The something you have piece is typically a smartphone or maybe a hardware key. Something you are includes biometrics like fingerprints or face scans. I should mention that users can self-register for both self-service password reset and for multi-factor authentication. Now let's talk a little bit about password protection. If you've ever tried to create a weak password for a user in Azure AD, you've probably noticed that Azure AD blocks that weak password. Now, this is because Azure maintains a global banned password list. This banned password list is automatically updated on a regular basis, and it's used to block weak passwords. While this password blocking that Azure offers is pretty good, you can even improve password protection even further by defining custom password protection policies. You use these password protection policies to block passwords that you deem insecure. You can even integrate Azure AD password protection with your on-prem Active Directory environment. To do this, you install a component in your on-prem environment. This component receives Azure's global banned password list along with your custom password protection policies from Azure AD. Your on-prem Active Directory domain controllers will then use these during password change events. What this does is allow you to leverage Azure AD to enforce the use of strong passwords regardless of where your users change their passwords. And that brings us to passwordless authentication. In an ideal world, there would be no passwords required for sign-in to begin with. I mean, this really is the end game for many organizations. To facilitate this, Microsoft offers passwordless authentication. When a user signs in through a passwordless method, Instead of providing a username and password, the user's credentials are provided via methods like biometrics through Windows Hello for Business or through a FIDO2 security key. Because Azure Active Directory allows you to natively authenticate through passwordless methods, you can simplify the sign-in process for your users while also reducing risks.